Hello and welcome to Frontrunner Motorsport. It's time for another One Race Wonder, a series where we look at the drivers who have the unfortunate honour of a single Grand Prix appearance. But as the number of the episode ends in a 5, it must be time to check on a team that only took part in one Formula 1 race. Previously we looked at the Francis Derrington team, Bugatti and Conu. This time for the chopping block is the British Lyncar team. That had the misfortune of taking part in just one Grand Prix, all the way back in the 1970s. So let's look at the story of the team owner Martin Slater, their New Zealand driver John Nicholson, and the star of the show, the Lyncar 006. So make sure you check out the One Race Wonder playlist, subscribe to the channel, and let's jump into the video. Normally, a small team fails when their massive ambitions fail to match the money they have backing them, and Lyncar were no different on that front. But they did have an ace in the hole. Martin Slater was something of a genius. Martin Slater was a race driver himself, racing in self-built cars in Formula Juniors and Formula 3 back in the mid-60s. He even got to race against the great Jackie Stewart when he was dominating the Formula 3 scene. But whilst success in his self-built Cheetah Mark I was never forthcoming, he had shown enough to get hired by some of the biggest names in motorsport, working for Lola, March, McLaren and former Brabham owner Ron Tauranac. But he would soon return to building his own cars, and so began the story of the Lyncar, named after his wife Linda, who would later be his ex-wife and therefore a regretful name choice at best. In 1971 the Lyncar 001 was built to compete in the British Formula Atlantic Championship. The cars were nearly as fast as Formula 2 vehicles of the time, but as cheap to run as Formula 3, so it was a good middle ground. But the story of the British Atlantic Series is messy, with two rival series existing at the same time, and eventually the series died as Formula 3 became the obvious choice. British Formula Atlantic existed for barely 10 years, but it was in this series that the Lyncar would have its first ever success, with Kiwi John Nicholson at the helm. The engineer from Auckland was an engine builder for McLaren who would end up winning the 1973 and 1974 Formula Atlantic Championships for Lyncar, and it was he who decided to commission Martin Slater for a Lyncar Formula 1 chassis. Whilst John Nicholson clearly had a decent turn of speed in him, he was also a very busy businessman and could not commit full time to a Formula 1 season. He had just started his own engine tuning business, and so that took precedence, which is smart. Focus on the successful business before blowing it all on a racing career that has no guarantees. The only guarantee is sinking your own time and money into it. And a smarter head meant John Nicholson was only able to compete in a few non-championship races and the British Grand Prix. John Nicholson took the Lyncar to an impressive 6th place in the 1974 International Trophy at Silverstone, won by James Hunt in a Hesketh. The 1974 British Grand Prix did not go as well, unfortunately. Backed by Bruno Drury of the Pinch Plant Hire Company, John Nicholson failed to qualify for the race, nearly 4 seconds off pole set by Nicky Lauda. He did at least beat fellow Kiwi Howden Ganley in a Mackie Ford. The Lyncar 006 Cosworth would return for one final time at the 1975 British Grand Prix. The car was decent for being a cheap ride, paid for by Nicholson and Drury for a laugh, not a serious attempt at getting a professional career off the ground. The plant hire company were only interested in having the company name on the side of a Formula 1 car in Britain, and John Nicholson has admitted it was just to have Grand Prix driver as a life experience. The Lyncar, according to Nicholson, handled well and was well built, meaning it would have been a good option for any privateer as it was cheaper to run than a custom March or McLaren. It just wasn't tested and developed to any serious degree, which in many ways is a great shame. It at least got to make an appearance in a Grand Prix. John Nicholson qualified 26th and last, and in his own words, it was the most boring race of his life, where he was at the back of the field minding his own business. The record books say he finished 17th and was caught up in a big crash at the end of the race, caused by a late storm that sent cars hurtling off the track. According to John Nicholson, once again, he never actually crashed and was actually stopped by a marshal before walking back to the pits in the pouring rain. He may actually have finished as high as 11th in the race. And that was the one-off Grand Prix appearance for One Race Wonders Lyncar and John Nicholson. They qualified, competed and completed a single Formula 1 Grand Prix. The Lyncar 006 was sold to Spanish future Formula 1 driver Emilio Di Vallota, who would go on to have some success with the car before making it into Formula 1 with a couple of appearances in a self-owned McLaren sponsored by Iberia Airlines. Unfortunately, no one seems to know what happened to the car itself. It may have been stripped for parts a long time ago. Martin Slater would continue to build cars under the Lyncar name for sports car racing, but with little success, and sadly passed away in 2020. Pinch Plant Limited still exists apparently, but I have no idea what happened to Bruno Drury. John Nicholson, after achieving the status of raced in a Grand Prix, would continue in motorsport for a couple of years, even almost purchasing a McLaren Formula 1 chassis that did not end up happening. He moved on to powerboat racing and running his successful engine tuning business before sadly passing away himself in 2017. So few people involved in the Lyncar's Formula 1 story are left alive at this point, and with the car itself sadly missing, it's one of those motor racing stories that might disappear from history if no one talks about it. And they had a couple of good runs in the car, 6th in the International Trophy, and they got to race the car in Formula 1. John Nicholson and Lyncar proudly join the One Race Wonder Club. Thank you very much for watching. Leave your thoughts in the comments below, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and check out the One Race Wonder playlist with nearly 50 episodes at this point. Thanks again, and have a good one.